So, DADGAD and composing. All right, so there's 1,000,001 different approaches to go with composing, as we know, as we talked about in all these different sessions, and there's not a right or a wrong way. But when it comes to alternate tunings of any kind, for me, I approach it in a way of not knowing what I'm doing whatsoever, which some of you will already be aware of. And that's not because I'm lazy, although I am slightly lazy. It's because it's a really exciting and creative way to work. Because when you're learning about guitar and standard tuning, you spend so long learning different shapes, different little patterns, that actually you can become really super predictable. When you start using open notes in a way that they're sort of underpinning everything that you're doing, if you play very simply and just use your musical ear, even if you're super underconfident with that, the results can be really exciting. So today's session is very much about coming from not knowing what you're doing whatsoever. So I'm not going to talk about E's or D's or G's or ones or twos or sevens or sus or whatever. I'm just going to talk about shapes, and we're going to explore from there. Okay, so a nice place to start is with a handful of very simple shapes. And the wonderful thing about DADGAD in particular is that we don't have to use many fingers or many notes that are fretted to create a really beautiful sound. In fact, a good rule of thumb is to use less, so to use 1 or 2 fingers, sometimes max. That's kind of a nice place to be. So if you were to create something on your own completely, start with 1 finger and use the open strings to complement, and then add fingers on top of that. And going beyond 2 or 3, maybe you want to walk away back. So the little shapes that I've got for you guys starts off with this one here, okay? So I've got my first finger on, I'm going to talk in standard tuning, okay, on the E string 2nd fret. And I've got my 3rd finger on the 4th fret on the D string, okay? Remember, we're on DADGAD, so we've got D, A, D, G, A, D. Okay, now we're not going to worry about playing the A string. We're going to let a nice lazy first finger mute that string. What I mean by that is it's not curved like this. Okay, it's nice and lazy and back like this. And if we just pick through that, so we're going to have the E string, the D, G, B. We should have a lovely sound like that. Now you can strum through it. But if you want to start thinking about finger picking, which this inevitably is going to be based around a bit, I would use your thumb to play E and D. I'd use my index finger to play the G, my middle finger for the B or the A, and my ring finger for the D or the E. Okay. Really, really beautiful sounding chord. And in fact, if you want to make it a little easier for yourself, you can take away that 3rd finger and just play this low E string 2nd fret. That's beautiful on its own as well. Okay. And the second little shape we've got is this. I'm going to take away my 1st finger, okay, and then I'm going to put my little finger on the 5th fret on the E string. Okay. So the first one looked like this, the second one looked like this. Okay, so remember, we're learning these chords because we want to create something with them, all right? If you find that a bit challenging because you're more of a beginner guitarist, just lose that 4th fret on the D string and just work with that low string, because that really does sound quite lovely on its own. think sometimes using open tunings or alternate tunings can be sort of seen as a bit of a cop-out for that very reason, that actually just using one finger sounds absolutely beautiful, but it's really, really not. And even if it was, who cares? It sounds great. So that's our first shape. That's our second shape. Don't worry about how you're playing it right now, because we're going to get into that as we work through it. So our third shape is then going to be taking our little finger off. Still got our third finger here on the 4th fret on the D. And we're going to put our first finger on the A string, 2nd fret. Okay, my thumb is now playing the A string rather than that low D. And then finally, I'm going to take away my first finger for the 4th chord. Okay. Cool. So let's just recap those and then I'll show you in tab form. All right. So first chord, first finger 2nd fret E string, 3rd finger always on the 4th fret D, and then 2nd chord, little finger 5th fret E string, 3rd finger still there, then 3rd chord, 1st finger on the A string 2nd fret, and then finally taking away that 1st finger. Sounds beautiful, doesn't it? And remember, if you want to make it nice and simple for yourself, or even you just feel a little tired, or maybe you prefer the sound of this, just play the bass notes and ignore that D string. Or with all fingers. Or we can just strum through them. Okie doke. So let's have a look at what that looks like in tab, just to help you out. Okay, don't worry about the ones at the bottom just yet. Great. Okay, so what do we need to draw attention to? Well, we want to draw attention to the bass notes, okay, because that's the really crucial bits along here. And then, oh, I need to go back to that because I need to move him out of the way. There we are. Cool, so we've got our bass notes. They're really, really important. And as we can see, that sort of number 4 there stays in the same place all the way through, okay? Now, just as a reminder, we're learning these to compose something, all right? So at this point, don't worry about how you're playing it. Just as you're sat there on your own, experiment a little bit. Because the whole idea of this is that it becomes your own. You know, maybe it's a kind of a singer-songwriter-y strumming vibe, or maybe it's going to be a sort of a percussive, lovely. Okay, so let's move on to our next batch of chords, which I'm going to start with looking at the tab first this time. Okay, so down here what we've done is we've added in a load of extra fingers. So what's happening here is we have to think a little bit about the fingering, all right? This will be a little bit more tricky if you're a beginner guitarist. The first one starts off with our first finger, 2nd fret E string again, and then we have these repeated 4s here. They are going to be with our 3rd and little finger the first time round, but just to challenge you guys a little bit, when we get to the second one, you're going to want to swap that round a little bit, and you're going to want to play the 4s with fingers 1 and 2, and you're going to want to play the 5th fret on the E string, or low D now, with your 3rd finger. Okay, And then finally, all we have to do is play the open A and take away the bass notes. Cool. All right. I'll let you guys just sort of work through those, get a bit more comfy with them. Feel free to screenshot at this point. If you really like reading the tab, you might find it quite helpful. And I'll just try and move back to have both in shot as well. There we are. Ah, Lucy, go for it.
Sorry, I missed what you said for which finger to use for the middle chord at the bottom where you've got the fifth on the E.
Fab. So, excellent question. I think it's probably best, even though it might seem a little crazy, to switch your fingers around. So you'd move your first and second down to the 2 4s, and then your third finger up there.
Okay, so yeah, you change your position then between that first and the second chord then.
Yeah, I'd say. Otherwise, it's just a little bit too much to do that. So,
is there any actual reason? Are you going to do something else with that little finger later, or is it? Should we do it? Should we? Is there a reason for us not to?
What, not to use your little finger up to here? Well, personally, I just find that a bit painful, really. But you know, you're welcome to do that. I mean, obviously, it does mean that we've got our little finger free as well, because we've literally, well, as Lucy used the phrase, shifted position. So we've gone from like second position up to fourth, which kind of makes a little bit of sense as well. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, thank you.
Pleasure. Great. Okay, cool. So I think by now, hopefully, we've all got a nice feel for the chords. All right. So let's understand how these are created a little bit as well, how they might come about, and obviously everyone's different. However, I would say that they've all come from maybe sort of one shape, all right? And they've just sort of gradually developed by a little bit of sort of the path of least resistance, if you like. So, for example, if you started off with this, or in fact, maybe just with one finger, as I was discussing earlier, the next thing to try is somewhere that's nearby and simplistic and easy to reach. So maybe putting your third finger down is quite logical. Same as when we move to the second shape. Actually, for me anyway, my little finger is sort of hovering there already. And actually my first finger is already there too. And when we get to the sort of second section, for me, I guess it's kind of a logical move maybe to mimic that 4 there, bringing it down to the G and B. Sounds very nice, but okay, let's try the same sort of bass line. But maybe rather than going here, just skip it. So these chord shapes are lifted right out of this piece that I sent you a link to. So they're very much things that I've sort of created, and probably in that way. But if you use that process, I think you can come up with some really cool stuff. So by keeping minimal fingers, not by trying to create something with loads of fingers straight away, and then just going with what's within easy reach. And when you're in an altered tuning, it's just so much easier to create something awesome sounding, because you've got these beautiful open strings. I mean, in DADGAD anyway, it's just cool anyway, isn't it? So we don't need to do loads to it. You can just let it sort of do the work for you. Okay, cool. So let's start building it into a little bit of a track. Let's sort of do a little bit of live composing, if you like. So we've got a structure. I would see this as a verse, and I'd see this as a chorus. Okay, and I think what we'll do is we'll just bring in a little bit of a finger-picked groove for now. Maybe we'll have that nice and chilled. Okay, I'll walk you through that. I'll just play it through one more time. So all I'm doing is I'm working through those first chords. I'm playing my thumb across the E to D or D to D. Okay, and then I'm more quickly lifting up with index, middle and ring. But what's different here, a little bit of interesting technique, is my fingers come back to the strings to stop it. That's what gives it its syncopation and funk, all right? If you can't do that, don't worry about it. You can still do this. It's going to sound lovely, but if we want to have a nice funky sound, I think it would be nice to play up with those fingers and then bring them right back to the strings to touch them and then play them again. So in more detail, first chord we're going thumb, thumb on D to D, and then up on G, B and E, or G, A, D, playing those strings, coming back, touching those strings to stop them, and then playing them again. That's quite an advanced technique, so if you can't do that, just play them twice. It'll still sound great. I can't do it without it. Okay, then we go to the next chord shape. My thumb doing exactly the same thing. Fingers doing the same thing. Now when we go to the third chord shape, we're on the A string, 2nd fret. Our thumb now plays A, D, G, B, E. And then with the open A, playing the A string again. Got a 90s kind of groove to it, hasn't it? I feel like it's like an Annie DeFranco song or something. Next level, I think it'd be nice to bring in a percussive hit after the. Okay, so. Sorry. Cool, and then if we want to just play an extra bass note again after that string slap, that can bring in a little bit more syncopation as well. What I'm doing here is I'm making it more and more complex, all right? Not to try and frustrate the beginner players, just stop when you don't want to do any more, all right? And just stick with the sort of layer that you've got. So. Cool. Okay. Hopefully we're getting the feel for what's going on. If you want to do the most simple way of doing this, it would just be working. You could even do it like this. Okay, that's totally fine, but it's really nice with those string slaps and the extra bass note. Remember, a string slap is just turning your wrist, aiming for the lower strings. You don't actually have to be super precise. As long as it's those lower strings, you get the nicer click with that. All right, it's pretty tricky. I think what we'll do is I'll just play that round a few times, give you the opportunity to play along a little bit. And of course, you can ask me to show you guys another bit if you like. Okay, here we go then. 1, 2, 3, 4. The simpler way. Back to the excellent, fantastic. So let's move on to our next section then. So we've gone through there, and then our next chords. So it needs some kind of pace change, really. So if stealing it right from what the piece that I created, kind of do this. Which is nice, but maybe a little complicated. So something along those lines. Maybe that kind of works. Cool. Okay, I'll just try and play that and just check it doesn't sound rubbish. it kind of works, doesn't it? Okay, let's roll with that anyway, because ultimately I'm trying to just give you ideas anyway, so you might just want to take one little tiny bit from this and use it. So this will be maybe a little tricky at first, but it'll suddenly click. So we have 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so there's a first 3 notes that are quite crucial. The first one being slightly longer with your thumb. So holding this first chord, all right, if you've got your first finger, 2nd fret, E string, no a D, and then you've got your 3rd and 4th on G and B or G and A, okay, you're going to play down on that low E, and then your thumb is going to play down on the D, and then your index is going to play up on the G. Okay, but try and just copy the rhythm. We won't talk in rhythm values and stuff in the spirit of things. Okay, slower, boom. Okay, so that's E, D, G, thumb, thumb, index, and then we're going to slap against the strings. Okay, and try and remember to turn your wrist when you do it as well. If you're already super cool at doing that, then just hone the sound, make it better. Okay, and then where the groove sort of comes in is our quick flick to the B string, or what is now the A string, with our middle finger. So after that string slap, you're going to play with your middle finger on the B string. So let's break that down again. So I'm going thumb, thumb, index, but there's a bit of spacing. Okay, and then we have a string slap by turning our wrist. All right, try and avoid going like that with your thumb. Turn your wrist. Okay, and then middle finger plays up on the B. We'll start super slow. I'm just going to play that round and round and round, just on that one chord. Super slow. It's actually a nice little picking pattern anyway that you could have applied to the first chords. Okay, this is all very modular. You can just take one piece and make a piece out of it. Cool, so once we've done that, let's do it a second time, but this time, rather than hooking up on the middle finger, why don't we hook up on the ring finger on the high E? Don't worry if it's getting like a little bit too much, just keep it simpler. So... and then we've got a nice little bit of melody there. Played at speed. Again, apply it to the first chords if you wanted to. Have a look at facial expressions, if they're completely bemused or everyone seems to be playing, so that's good. Nice. Lovely. All right, cool. Okay, so we can just use that on the second chord. just the same. And we can use it on the third chord, but let's double up on it. What I mean by that is we do it twice, and we play from the A string. Woo, cool. So we've got something that sounds pretty nice. Let me just play that chorus through then. Back to the verse. It was a bit quicker, wasn't it? And then cool. I think that sounds pretty cool. Apologies for my inconsistencies, but obviously I've never played it before because we just wrote it now. But I think that kind of works. And as I say, like we've gone quite far with that. So even if you walk away just with that, you know, just the little chord shapes played very simply. If you walk away with getting one bit of the little finger picking pattern that we use there, that's really cool. It's really trying to get something for absolutely everyone to take away and just showing a bit of a creative process, really. Cool. Okay, well, is there any bits that anyone wants me to go over there just to sort of show it or break it down again, or are we sort of all happy and all right? We've got a thumbs up, that's good. Fabulous. Okay, cool. Well, what I propose then is I'll try and play around like that again to give you an opportunity to do that. And then I think I'll just give you a little insight into what I did with these shapes in my composition, because it doesn't sound anything like this at all, but it uses these shapes. And it just got a nice little technique-driven improvisation thing that I use in it as well, which I think will be fun to show you guys as well. Cool. All right, let's just play around that verse and chorus a few more times to let us enjoy it. Of course, you might just want to jam along. Totally up to you. So 1, 3, 4. Here we go. Back to the beginning. Oops. And again. Oh, sorry. One more time. The chorus and cool. I think that sounds pretty good. I think maybe we should like release what we compose in these sessions and start an actual band. It's got a nice little groove to it, hasn't it? Quite tricky to play though. Oh, I'm finding it quite tricky to play anyway. Wonderful. Okay, so what did I do with these shapes? Well, the piece of music has lots of other shapes as well, but it's based around these. So I give you a little glimpse of the sort of chorus part that I had, which was playing it like this. And the sort of main verse part, I had a similar idea, which relates back quite nicely to last week's session, which is working with hammer-ons as a part of the sort of rhythm. So I'm playing hammer on, and then I'm hammering on with my left hand without playing it. Okay, and when it comes to working with open tunings or DADGAD in particular, doing that sort of stuff is really lovely because every little hammer on helps the whole guitar to resonate. Okay, so they're exactly the same shapes, but just worked completely differently. Now there's another little part in this piece that I thought might be nice to throw in as a last minute thing, which is lovely to do in DADGAD, and it's a nice little technique. So I start with a little improvisation. We have this sort of almost Indian classical inspired tremolo thing, which sounds a bit like this. And all that's happening, okay, is something that I would like to show you, which is using a Tremolo Technique, okay, where we're playing thumb, ring finger, middle finger, index finger, okay. And if you just work on one, just between the D string, for example, I'm going thumb, ring, middle, index, okay, and just building it up. And then all I'm doing then is just alternating between the two Ds. And then gradually, okay, which does kind of come relatively, well, quicker than you think from the first time you try it anyway. We'll keep it sort of slow like that for now. And then all I'm doing is just improvising with a scale with one finger, okay, and using one finger is really important part of this because it gives this lovely sort of sitar-like sliding around sound on a little scale on the E string. I start on the 7th fret. Okay, and then I just do a few little jumps, a nice sort of rug Yaman inspired movement is this, where we go 7 to 10, down to 5, up to 9. So that's 7 to 10, 5 to 9. And then 4 to 7, 2 to 5 to 4. Don't worry if that just sounded like a long list of numbers, because it was. So let's do it again. We do 7, 7 to 10, 5 to 9, 4 to 7, 2 to 5 to 4. Okay? And it's a lovely little technique to play around with, and then we can take it much further, moving up to the 12th fret and up to the 14th. Okay, and that's also making the most of that sort of the 2 Ds. You get these pedal notes. And then we can start to swap it around as well, where we don't do anything on the E string, we just do stuff on the D string. So for example, okay, so that's the same pattern, but I'm just working on the D string instead. Cool. There we go. That's something to enjoy or not enjoy if it hurts, because it does hurt a bit, doesn't it? It shouldn't hurt. Stop if it hurts. That's the advice. Fabulous. All right. Well, we've got the tab there. I tell you what, I'm going to get the tab up one last time for you guys if you want to screenshot it, because it's quite short, so don't think there's any need for me to sort of put that up. If you want to screenshot that, you're very welcome if you want those chords to take away. I hope that was enjoyable. I hope that you can take even just the tiniest bit and go and create something with it. I would love to do this for a completely different tuning with a different idea. And if you spend the week in DADGAD just creating stuff, that's cool. It's a really nice way to be. Now, there is this sort of psychological thing, all right, that will happen somewhere in that week if you do this, which will be like, well, what happens when you go back to standard tuning? As if you've sort of wasted a week. That's not the case at all right? It'll be lovely and refreshing when you go back to standard. And next week we won't be in standard anyway, so don't worry about it. Great. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. A pleasure. And yeah, I will stop recording.